Hey there, welcome to Farmcraft. We're working on a generator today. I originally intended to put this in my last video when I was doing all the fixing things, but this little gem wanted to be in a video all on her own. Yeah, this thing was quite a tricky repair, and I'm going to take you through it, kind of how I went through it. So let me give you a little bit of backstory. I was using this many months ago, and it quit working, and at the beginning of the video I didn't remember specifically why, because it had taken me too long to get to the repair. So let's get into it. The last time I went to use it, it just wouldn't run. It would kind of fire and try to start, but it just wouldn't go. And that's been several months ago, so I haven't fooled with it since. The first thing you want to do is check your oil, and it's perfect. Some of these have interlocks that if the oil gets low, they're not going to run. Let's see here, it's on choke. The fuel is on. I just put fresh fuel in it, so that's certainly not the issue. And then this is on fast. Let's see what it does. Don't you just love that? The worst kind of problem is the intermittent problem, because it definitely would not run before. I had to go get a different generator. Now it seems to be working fine. Let me get some tools. I'm going to put it under load. All right, I got 2 space heaters and a circular saw. Let's see how it does under load. Well, I don't know what to say about that. I can tell you when it wouldn't work, I took the carburetor off, I cleaned everything up and put it back together, tried to get it to run, it would not run. I don't remember specifically what it was doing. It would run, but I could not get it to produce power for me. I think it kept bogging out and stalling even though I didn't have much load on it. You know, if things are going to break, I wish they just have the decency to go ahead and break. When they work intermittently, that is the most difficult thing for me. How do you fix it when you can't reproduce the problem? I'm sure all the auto mechanics out there really know what I'm talking about. You know, one thing I noticed here actually is I had that thing almost fully choked. To run properly, if I take the choke off. Well, let me check that. Hang on. So if I unchoke it, it dies. It has to be choked. It just gave me 40 amps of power. How does that make any sense? I mean, if it's choked, you would think the engine wouldn't be able to put out much. That is really interesting. So what I'm thinking here is if it requires being choked, that means you are adjusting the fuel-air mixture, constricting the air, and basically the engine is starving for fuel because when you open the air up, it dies. It gets too lean and it can't run. Opening up that adjustment screw a little bit, see if that makes any difference. Ooh, now it doesn't want to run. Alright, I'll close it back down. Maybe we're on to something here. This is giving me deja vu. It ran for a while and now it won't run. Yes, it's funny. This is sparking my memory. This is exactly what happened. It started, it ran for a little while, and then it quit running. Okay, so what can we do to figure out what the issue is here?
This is sparking my memory.
So my first question is it getting fuel? And we can easily answer that. Air filter doesn't look too bad. Starting fluid obviously can be helpful for getting something going, but it's really helpful to me as a diagnostic. So this thing won't run. Let's confirm that again. Now we give it a little juice. Now will it run? Tried to. Let's give it a little more. Well, So what is that telling me? Maybe I need to choke it. Definitely likes being choked. Alright, so typically I'm able to get it to run off of the starting fluid if it's just a fuel delivery issue, but this thing's acting weird. So let's keep fiddling with it. It's sat for a minute now. Let's see if it'll fire up again. Tries to. I kind of wonder if I'm not getting intermittent spark. So these things are really handy. This is basically a light that will light up when the spark plug fires, and you just put it in line. So I'm going to disconnect the plug, plug this in. So here's our light right here. Let's see if we have any spark. Well, then that's something. It's not the carb, I'm getting intermittent spark, because it's not sparking right now. Now it stops. Well, I was fully expecting this to be a carburetor issue. I still haven't explained why it needed to be choked when it was running, but something is getting hot, because it works at first, and then once it heats up, it will not work. So I'm betting you, so this kill wire, this green wire right here is the kill wire. And when you hit stop, you bring this down and watch, it makes a connection there. That is connected to the green wire. And what you're doing is you're grounding that, and that causes it to stop sending a spark. That basically grounds out the ignition so that the ignition no longer functions and shuts the engine off. So that wire goes around this corner and then up that way. So I need to take all this stuff off. I checked the whole length of the green wire and I do not see any damage or corrosion on it. Same goes for the white wire there. So I'm disconnecting the green wire here to take it out of the equation. That's it. I'm taking this spark plug out so that I can turn the engine over easier. I may not be spinning this fast enough. I also spin it faster later to verify. No spark. Now the kilt wire, why does it have two? Well, this one, if you trace it, it goes down to a device underneath the oil pan. So that is the low oil pressure lockout. And what that's going to do is going to apply ground to this if there's no oil in it and prevent it from running. So we can just disconnect that. So now I know that this ignition module is not grounded. We still don't have spark now. It's this ignition module. A little bit of spark. Yeah, that's not a proper spark. I think this is our issue, and it doesn't surprise me because it's working intermittently. It'll run here and there, so obviously it sparks some, but it's not sparking like it should. barely sparking. So the way this works is as this flywheel is spinning, it has a magnet on it right here. And when that magnet passes under here, there's a coil in there, and that generates the spark. If you apply a ground to this connection, it won't produce a spark. And it's pretty simple. It is possible that it could be this plug wire, unlikely, but I can't replace that without replacing the coil. So people often call this a coil or an ignition module, whatever, same thing. Since I've got all the kill wires disconnected, I know they're not grounding it out. So there's just nothing, and this is a new plug. If you've watched my channel at all, you know darn well I would open this thing up and see if I could fix it if it was possible. But these things are all potted epoxy. There's just no getting in there. Not user serviceable or serviceable by anybody. They're throwaway when they quit working. I also wanted to say this makes the most sense because this thing will run good at first, and then once it gets hot, something stops working. Well, what would stop working? Wires don't tend to do that. It's possible. Whereas these things with smaller wires and internal parts and things like that, when they get hot, like a relay, that kind of thing, oftentimes they'll quit working. So yeah, this is, and stuff like this is highly suspect when you have that symptom. And that's a pretty common symptom. Works great until it gets hot and then it won't work anymore. So I'm standing right at my new shop addition, and that would be a black bear, right in the middle of the day. Well, this took some doing to get. Nobody had it. I had to order it online and pay extra for fast shipping because didn't want to wait too long. Want to get this video out. What do you guys think? Is this going to fix it? I was thinking I really should have tested with a different spark plug, but now that the thing's cooled off, I would have to go through a whole, it would be, I'm just going to put this on and we'll see what it does. I have a theory on the choke that might still be related to this, and we'll see if that pans out. Yeah, this has been kind of a tricky fix here. A little harder than typical. So what you want to do is put those on loose, get the magnet right underneath it, put a business card in there to set your gap. I'll break those bolts off. Let's put this thing back together and see if it runs. That's the real test. Here we are, a moment of truth. Choke on, we know we're going to need that. Let's see what it does. So I'm going to summarize what it did here. It started right up and ran much better than it was. I still had to keep it on that second choke position in order to get it to run properly. It ran a little better. If I unchoked it one more click, it used to stall. Now it would kind of struggle and spit and sputter, but it would keep running. Basically, as long as I kept it in that almost fully choked position, it ran very well. It handled loads. It put out 40 amps. It was definitely an improvement. Definitely runs better. So it likes this choke position. This is full choke, so it's one click back. That's full choke right there. That's the position it wants to run in. I mean, you can see that's not open very much. This is the position that it's struggling to run in, but will run a little bit. And there's wide open. It will not run in that position. But before, in the second position, it would not run. It would die immediately. My thought on that was the spark was so weak that it just couldn't ignite that much fuel and air, that when I unchoked it that much, it was dying. That's totally a theory. I don't even know if that's a thing. But how does it make any sense that replacing my ignition module is going to affect how it runs on choke? But I have no doubt that module was bad. It just ran much longer than it's ever run since this problem started. And, you know, I think it would fire right back up right now. The question is that carburetor bad, or do I just need to do some adjustments on it? So let me fiddle and see if I can get that thing working better. Here I'm adjusting the low speed screw, and it does not make any difference whatsoever in how the engine runs. Kind of what you would expect because I'm not trying to idle it. There's also an adjustment right here that is the high speed screw. Let's see if that adjustment does anything. All right, now what's going on here? What do you bet I'm out of fuel?
Together, man. LIC. Okay, stop it.
It ain't got no gas in it.
No, it had fuel, but don't forget to check the basics. Yeah, there's plenty of fuel in there. Well, I'm putting the spark tester back on. Holy crap, it is doing it again. I don't have any spark. Intermittent spark. Unreal. Alright, here's a different plug. Changing to a different spark plug made no difference, so it's not the plug. Just verifying that it's getting fuel. It just quit sparking again. I'm totally flooded. See the fuel dripping out of the carburetor? This thing's throwing every curveball at me that it can. Okay, this is getting comical. So I had messed with this, and I think that's why it wasn't running and flooding. So I closed it down, and but I'm still getting intermittent spark. I'm going to disconnect all the kill wires. Maybe this oil thing is sending a kill signal intermittently. That would be nice. I can disconnect that thing. This is an old generator. If it ever runs out of oil and dies, well then it dies. Okay, kill wires are disconnected. So I have this thing, I still have the light on there because I don't trust it to not stop sparking on me again. I've disconnected my kill wires, so I can't turn it off with this anymore. So I'll just have to completely close up the intake to turn it off. Or probably just, the thing's not running anyway, so it'll stop on its own, won't it? So now there's no kill wire on it. And if I get intermittent spark, I'm really going to be confused here. All right, well, that's sparking continuously. Let's choke that. You know, I think that oil sensor was giving me an intermittent kill signal. Love that. Here I'm trying to adjust the high-speed screw. This carburetor is so finicky. When it was choked, I would open this until it wasn't running, and then I would open the choke a little bit, and it was backfiring, and it's just, I think this thing needs a new carburetor. Let's throw a new carb on here and see what that does. We have unloaded the parts cannon. So I tried to find this carburetor to get a new one, and I could not find it. I don't think they make it anymore, but there was like a replacement that's very similar that should work. Keep in mind, off camera, I've already taken this thing off, cleaned it all out, and you can see the adjustments are making a huge difference in how it runs. So I don't think we've got a clogged jet or anything. I think this carburetor is probably old and worn out in some way. There's no diaphragm in there to replace, and there's no rebuild kits available. So my only option was to get a new carb. So as I'm taking this carb off, something occurred to me, and I should have checked this a long time ago, and that is this gasket, after the carburetor, as it goes into the actual engine, is that leaking? Because The carburetor obviously is mixing the air and the fuel into the proper mixture. So before the carburetor, like if this gasket's leaking, it doesn't really matter. That's the air coming in. If that gasket was leaking really bad, it could allow some trash or something to get in there that shouldn't, because this is filtered. But that's it. It's not going to change your air-fuel mixture. If this gasket is leaking and the engine is sucking air through a bad gasket, which is a possibility there, it's going to change your fuel mixture. And you're going to get too much air, and you're going to be lean. And what would that mean? You'd need to choke down your carburetor. So it is entirely possible that that was my problem. And the way to check that, man, I really wish I had thought of that before I ripped this apart. But the way to check that is to spray that like with some carb cleaner while the engine is running. And if it changes the way it runs, you hear it rev up or die down or whatever, then you know that some of that carb cleaner is getting pulled into the engine and that gasket's leaking. If you spray the whole gasket and it makes no difference, then the gasket's not leaking. Curiosity was killing me, so I went ahead and put the car back on, and I'm going to spray that gasket. So that made no difference, and that makes me happy because I don't want to just throw a new carb on here if it doesn't really need one, but I really think it does. I also checked the gasket on the other side of the intake tube here, and that made no difference. And then since I had taken the carb off and put it back on, I tried adjusting it one more time, but no difference. Very finicky and just can't get it to run right. I think I could use this generator like it is, but I can tell you a replacement carb was cheap and I have it. Let's put it on there and let's see if it makes any difference. We might learn something here. So I'm going to rip this thing off. I really do think that replacing the ignition module helped, but I also think for some reason I was getting an intermittent kill signal from this oil pressure. Not sure why that would be. Don't know much about how that mechanism works, but disconnecting that white kill wire. I have the green one connected now and it's running fine, sparking well. Old carb, new carb. The new carb has this, but this is just on the air intake side, so that can be left alone or plugged maybe. I don't really know what that's for. Comes with a new gasket. And I went ahead and got a new air filter. And now that I got a new gasket on here, I got to take this to the proper spec. Click! Click! All right, perfect. I'm changing out this fuel filter because the new carburetor came with one. I had tested the old one. There was plenty of flow through that filter. It was not the issue. A nice pretty new air filter. All right, what do you think? Is it going to run different? Might help if I turn the fuel back on. That would definitely help. All right, moment of truth. I'm so used to choking this thing that I'm forgetting how it's supposed to run. This wants to run right wide open, and it's a hot day and the engine's already warmed up. That's exactly how it should be running. Yes, the choke is wide open and it's running perfectly. That thing has not run that well in a long time. This required being wide open for it to run. Interesting. I'm not sure what that other carb was doing, but something was not right. And yeah, it ran like a top. I loaded it all the way to 40 amps. It barely even flinched. Awesome. It's fixed. What I did there at the end is what I usually do when I'm not going to use an engine for a while. I turned the fuel off and waited for it to start to starve for fuel. I heard it start bogging down. And then choke it because it's not getting enough fuel, so you cut down the air and the mixture's right. And then you let it run choked until it stalls, and then I give it a couple pulls just in case there's a little more fuel in there. But right now the carburetor bowl is empty, and the passages should all be clear, and it can sit like that for a while without gumming up my carburetor or anything like that. But yeah, this one really took me all the way around. I kind of had to do the electrical side, every little aspect of this to get this thing to work. I'm wondering how many small engine mechanics out there are shaking their heads at me. I'm certainly no expert. I'm a jack of all trades. I don't work on small engines all the time, I kind of muddle my way through and do the best I can. A real small engine mechanic would probably have had this diagnosed and fixed much, much faster. But for me, this was a tricky one. I ended up having to disconnect the oil interlock. I had to put a new ignition module on it and then a new carburetor on it. Yeah, and I kind of unloaded the parts cannon, but I think everything I did, the ignition module definitely made a difference. Wonder that the kill wire and the ignition module both, maybe I don't know. Maybe it was just the kill wire and the ignition module wasn't necessary, but it really seemed to make a difference. But this new carb definitely made a difference. That made a big difference. It's now running wide open like it should. I'm gonna go tear into that carburetor and take a look at it and just make sure there's nothing that I missed on the first time that I tried to rebuild it, because I did that off camera. You guys deserve to see what's inside there. See, hanging on there is your needle. And up inside there is the seat. So this guy went there, and this screws up against a taper in there, and then opens up. There's ports on the side where it can suck the fuel up through. Just not much to this thing. Pretty sure that's supposed to be the low speed screw, but it might even be plugged there. And obviously adjusting that made no difference on how it ran. Everything seems wide open. Yeah, that's wide open there. The fact that it needed to be choked tells me it was leaking air somewhere. Who knows? Maybe it was sucking a bunch of air through there or through there, and just messing up the fuel mixture. I don't know. But replacing it fixed it, and it was cheap, so we're going with that. Sometimes that's the way it is, especially when you're a jack of all trades. Yeah, guys, this was a tough one for me. It took me quite a while. Welcome comments, suggestions. Hope you guys learned something. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.